I'll never die. The large banner headline read, "The search continues for Wade Carson." With the local paper spread out on his kitchen table, 30-year-old Justin Vicks sipped coffee as he read about the search for the missing boy in the fields and woods around the small town of Clayville. The sheriff believed foul play was involved, but wouldn't go into details. And there was a photo of Wade's parents, dark, sad eyes and drawn faces, thanking the community for helping look for their son. Justin folded up the paper and lit a cigarette. Bumbling yahoos couldn't find shit in an outhouse, he thought, shaking his head as he considered the level of their ineptitude. After crushing out his smoke and the remains of his lunch, he unlocked the basement door and descended the stairs. In a corner of the dingy, musty room was 6-year-old Wade, curled up in a tight ball, sitting on a stained mattress. Justin smiled as he took in the scene, and then walked toward the terrified boy. Around 5 that evening, there was a knock on the front door, and Justin found himself facing 2 sheriff's deputies, men he had known all his life. "Justin," said one of the officers, "sorry to bother you." "Bill? Art? What can I do for you?" "Sorry, but do you still drive that blue F-100? asked Art. "Yeah, why?" "Well, Edith Lascos was looking out her kitchen window last Friday about the time Wade went missing, and thought she saw a young boy get into the passenger side of a blue pickup." "Oh no, that wasn't... I can't believe this. I was at work all day Friday. You can ask Marv." Bill was now looking over Justin's shoulder. "I didn't know you had kids, Justin." Feeling as if he'd just been punched in the stomach, Justin tried to remain steady. "Kids? No, I don't have any kids." "Well, I saw a boy run from one room to the other." "Stay focused. Cool." "That's impossible, Bill." "I know what I... There he goes again. He ran into the kitchen." Art shook his head. "I saw him too." Justin turned, but there was nothing there. "That's not possible," he said, his voice cracking and rising in pitch. "There's no kid here. I'm telling you, there's no one else in this house." "Calm down, Justin. I think we'd better take a look around." The 2 officers brushed past the shaken man, who now turned in a panic. "Stop!" Justin shouted. Wearing grim expressions, the 2 officers turned toward the now wide-eyed, frantic man. "There is no boy," he yelled, flecks of spit flying. "Because he's dead. I killed him hours ago." Justin sank to his knees, sobbing. "I killed him." After a few minutes, he felt a warm breath on one ear and heard a boy's voice. "You killed me," Wade whispered, "but I'll never die." I survived the New York Ripper. I grab a morning paper from the newsstand on my way to work. He got another one, I thought, as I read the headline, "New York Ripper claims another victim." That's 10 now. 10 young women snuffed out by this madman. Sends a shiver up my spine just thinking of it. The city has been in a panic for the past 7 weeks, since the first woman was found, with daily reminders from the news outlets to constant urgings from the police to be cautious when going out. No shit, Sherlock. I'd like to tell them. Don't you think every woman in the city with a proper head on her shoulders is frightened with the thought of running into the Ripper? I know I am. I've taken every precaution. I've followed every step they've told us to take when going outside, from not going out at night to always travel in 2s, Never travel alone when possible. Hell, I even purchased some pepper spray. Just the same old they're always telling you to do in these situations. I feel uneasy now. I always do after reading or hearing about the Ripper. As I continue walking to work, I look at any man that passes me with caution. I always do now. You just never know who the Ripper could be. Nobody even knows what he looks like. As I reach my office building, relief washes over me as I walk through the front door. I work with a bunch of sweet old ladies, so work has felt the safest place for me since this has all begun. The day was a typical work day, long and boring, of course with sporadic chit-chat from the ladies sprinkled throughout the day about the Ripper. That's all anyone talks about nowadays when gathered in large groups. As the shift came to an end, we said our goodbyes and told each other to be careful heading home. As I walked out of the office door, I could see the sun was still out, which was great because I didn't want to be stuck outside walking at night, and it looked like it would be up long enough for me to run to the corner store on the way home to pick some things up for dinner. When I turned to walk towards the store, however, I noticed parked across the street from my office was a man sitting in a black van, just staring at me. I was spooked right away. This is exactly what I've been cautious of. Creepy and suspicious dudes. And this was a creepy dude in a creepy-ass van, and he was staring. Just staring at me. And he was smiling. I ran as fast as I could. I didn't look back, but I could hear him start up the engine. I thought I could lose him in the traffic, though, as the streets and sidewalks were filled with cars and people getting off work. I felt safer when I got into the store. I got my things for dinner and tried to leave as quickly as possible, but the store was packed. I was in that place at least a half hour longer than I wanted to be. By the time I left the store, though, it was dark. This is exactly what I didn't want to happen, being stuck outside alone at night. But I was just a few blocks away from my house. It'll be fine, I thought. I just have to hurry. I began walking at a quickened pace. I didn't see the black van, so I thought I was in the clear. As I got just a block away from my house, I approached an alleyway. I decided to run past it, but right when I was about to clear the alleyway, I felt a hand grab my shoulder and another hand cover my mouth. A man's rough, snarled voice whispered into my ear. "You're coming with me, bitch. You're going to die tonight, but we're gonna have some fun first." He dragged me toward a dimly lit light. It was the back of his van. The doors were open, and I could see two bodies stacked on the side of the floor. I could see that the carpet was an orange shag. Actually, the whole inside of the van was lined with it. I remembered at that very moment the paper this morning saying that the only evidence found on some of the bodies was a couple of pieces of orange carpet fibers. My God, it's the Ripper. He's got me. I'm about to be the latest victim found in some ditch somewhere, I thought. As he got me to the doorway of the van, I knew I had to try something or I'd be done. So as hard as I could, I slammed into his foot with my heel. He loosened his grip from my mouth, and it allowed me to bite into his hand. He screamed out in pain. I then turned and kneed him in the balls, and when he bent over in pain, I took his head and smashed it into the open van door. He fell to the ground moaning, and I turned and got the hell out of there, running all the way home. I called the police first thing, but when they got to the alley, he was gone. But I know what the bastard looks like, and now the police do too. It's just a matter of time now. You son of a bitch. Misadventures on the dark web. I believed in happily ever after, until I married Nina. But 9 years of lies and adultery taught me perpetual bliss was a myth and a fantasy. Instead, my marriage was a prison, and I wanted out. I felt like I'd been sentenced to eternal damnation, condemned to suffer and burn as the implacable hellfire swallowed me. To drown the misery, I worked nonstop. Meanwhile, Nina complained about everything. "Why does the sink look so nasty? What's wrong with the dog, Chase? Why does he look so unhappy? Oh my God." She ranted and ranted until one day I snapped. I met Gonzo on the dark web, and one night I got the nerve to ask. Me. "How much?" Gonzo. 5,000, but more if there are complications. Unfortunately, there were complications. Turns out, Nina's boyfriend was at the house, so Gonzo had to take him out, and the boyfriend's foot got stuck in the drain. That night, Gonzo texted from a burner phone. "Done. But you need to come here now. We've got problems." When I arrived, Nina's twisted body sat inside a suitcase, her limbs stacked unnaturally on top of one another, and her head swiveled backward on her neck. She looked wax-like, like a triple-jointed contortionist or a poorly crafted store mannequin. "In here!" Gonzo shouted. The dead boyfriend rested belly down in the shower, one foot stuck in the drain. Gonzo strapped on goggles, threw me a pair, and powered on a chainsaw. "Hold the ankle while I chop. Warning, this is gonna get messy." The chainsaw revved and roared as a blade tore into the man's foot, the flesh squishing and squelching as chunks of tendon and toe rained from the shower, spraying us like an unholy bath. Oh, fuck my life, I thought. Gonzo continued hacking until the last toe loosened and tumbled down the drain. I had nightmares about the severed foot for a while, but the image of Nina's body has haunted me ever since. One evening, I gazed at the suitcase where her body had been, and a vision played before me. In the vision, Nina's motionless body reappeared in the suitcase, twisted again like a human braid. But then, a toe twitched, and another, until Nina reawakened bit by bit. Then, breath returned to her body, pulsing through her as her spindly limbs unfolded and untwined, unwrapping from around one another. Her legs were preternaturally limber and lithe under her red silk nightie as she climbed out of the suitcase and sashayed towards me. "Don't you miss me, Chase?" My eyes bulged. She sounds so real. "Why'd you do it, Chase?" "Stop." But Nina wouldn't stop. In fact, she still hasn't stopped talking. She talks to me in the shower, in bed, and in my dreams. "Why'd you do it, Chase?" "Stop." "Huh? Why?" "Stop." "Why, Chase?" "Stop." But she won't stop. She'll never stop. The tattoo. Head throbbing, stomach churning, I pulled myself up slowly to a sitting position in bed. I hadn't had a hangover this bad in ages. I remembered meeting my friends, Todd and Kip, downtown for a drink. But after moving to a second bar, everything goes dark. I hooked up with someone. Think her name is Carla. After a minute, she came out of the bathroom, not looking much better than I felt. "How are you?" I asked. "I feel like shit," she declared, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Thank God for cabs. Last thing I remember is the tattoo parlor." I tilted my head. What? Tattoo parlor. Carla frowned and pointed. On the back of my hand was a brand new tattoo, the skin around its edges still red and irritated. It was some kind of symbol, like a rune or something. I tried to talk you out of it. What the fuck? I don't remember anything. What is it? There was this creepy old lady sitting at the bar, and she overheard us talking about tattoos. She drew that on a napkin and gave it to you. Said it was an ancient symbol of good luck. Next thing I remember is being in a tattoo place where you got that done. I looked at that symbol again. Good luck. Wonder if it works. Carla's head snapped towards me. Her eyes widened and darkened. Her lips curled back to exposed teeth like an angry dog. Suddenly, it wasn't the face of a woman, but of a creature. You're still alive, aren't you? Flight 74. The older gentleman next to me in the window seat was staring out at the white carpet of clouds below the plane when he spoke. I forgot my pills. Excuse me? I asked. He turned towards me. His eyes were red as if he'd been crying, his face ashen. I forgot my pills. Sorry, I said, not knowing how else to respond. We'll be landing in about a half hour. I won't last that long without my pills. Do you have a heart condition? Should I get a flight attendant? The man turned back to the window. No, I'm afraid that won't help, he said, with a sense of resignation. Repeat. This is UA Flight 74, requesting permission for an emergency landing. Over. What is the nature of your emergency? There's something happening in the main cabin. Flight attendants are not responding. We can hear screams. Flight 74? You have permission to land. Flight 74. Do you read? Flight 74. I found out what happened to my friend on the dark web. There used to be a small YouTube channel called Sam's Online Food Review. It was run by my best friend, Sam Ryder. A channel full of videos that consisted of Sam eating and reviewing food and drink before a camera. His channel garnered around 10,000 subscribers, which although wasn't huge, it was big enough for Sam to be dedicated to it. I can recall numerous times of sitting in the passenger seat of his car, staying out of his shot, as moments prior he announced he wanted to video himself trying something he picked up in the store, only moving after he signed off with his signature thumbs up or down, and his catchphrase, I like it, or I loathe it. He was liked for his friendly attitude and happy all-round good guy persona. He was well received by his audience. Rarely were there any hate comments, and when there were, Sam would shrug them off and keep smiling. Sam was always smiling. Sam's Online Food Review went dark 7 months ago. No warning, no notice, just deactivated. I didn't hear or see from Sam, despite numerous phone calls and house visits to no avail. 6 days after his channel was deleted, I called the police to do a welfare check on Sam. I was worried he had fallen ill or hurt himself. The police made entry into his property and found nothing, and Sam was declared a missing person. A week after Sam was declared missing, A dog walker discovered a horrifically mutilated corpse on a railway line. The body had severe lacerations all around the head, arms, chest, and legs, and was almost cut in two across the waist. The decomposing internal organs splayed out of the gruesome V-shaped cut. The autopsy report noted that although no direct cause of death could be confirmed, it was likely the large slit in the throat that brought on death. The autopsy also turned up questionable findings, including the body missing its stomach and heart, long strips of flesh removed off the chest, arms, and lower back, and that the body was exsanguinated. The scene wasn't remarkably bloody, yet the body was almost completely drained of blood. 2 weeks later, the police had identified the deceased. Despite the damage that had occurred to the corpse, the teeth were intact enough to get a viable reference for dental records. My worst fears for Sam were realized. It was him. The police investigated but could not find forensic evidence of any other person being on the scene. They eventually came to the conclusion that he was hit by a passing freight train, the lacerations and disembowelment attributed to being dragged under, and the missing organs explained away as being eaten by wildlife. A fox, maybe. Sam's mother decided it was best to cremate what remained of her only son. I stood next to her as the beach coffin was pulled into the large furnace. As the door closed and the gas jets ignited with a whoosh, she broke down into tears, and so did I. I stood there sobbing for the entire 90 minutes it took for one of the people I grew up with and shared so many memories with was vaporized. I mourned my friend and did my best to move on, and it was going well. I got distracted, got a new job, started dating a girl I met through my work. A few months passed, and even though I missed Sam, things were going well, right up to the point when I was browsing Reddit at 3 a.m. that I received a Facebook message from the account of my dear friend. I froze. Seeing his profile picture in the messenger bubble, a picture taken during good times, Sam's wide smile plastered on his face. I felt a sudden chill. A profound sense of fear enveloped me. You know the fear that makes you cold, and your limbs ache as the slow drip of adrenaline spreads throughout your body. With dread, I opened the message. It was a link to a file-sharing website. I stared at the seemingly random amalgamation of numbers and letters that made up the URL, my head racing through what the hell was on the other side of the link. And more importantly, why did my dead friend send me it? My hand, seemingly on autopilot, brought the cursor above the link, with my gut instinct screaming no. I clicked on the link. Before my finger had lifted from the click, I immediately regretted what I just did. Chrome opened a new tab to the website. The screen was gray, apart from a black rectangle in the middle of the page, which had a play button over it. I stared at it, unwilling to click. What I was scared of, I did not know. Around 10 seconds had passed, then the screen refreshed. Instead of the play button, the rectangle had the words auto, playing in 5 seconds, in bright white on it. I watched as the numbers counted down, trying to understand what was going on. An abrupt buzzing noise made me jump. The video began to play. The camera was pointed at what appeared to be a grimy white tiled surface. I could hear the sound of muffled whimpering, followed by footsteps of someone approaching the camera. There was some slight rustling noise as the camera was adjusted. The screen blurred out as the camera was turned. When the camera came back into focus, I let out a choked gasp. In the middle of a white-tiled room, Sam lay on his back on a stainless steel table, his eyes wide in pure, unfiltered terror. The light of a single bulb hanging over the table reflected off the sheen of sweat that coated his forehead, his naked chest rising and falling rapidly in panic. He looked into the camera and attempted to yell, the noise muffled by a tight cloth gag that was bound around his head. His hands were also bound together tightly with duct tape. I stared at the screen, feeling increasingly sick, my brain failing to grasp what was going on. Before I could even comprehend what was happening, the sound of Sam squirming and whimpering was interrupted by a high-pitched, "Welcome to Sam's online food review. Today, we have a special treat." The mocking tone came from behind the camera. Sam's panic increased. He started jerking his body, trying to free his hands. The voice continued, "Today, we will try what is considered a delicacy in many countries, although usually a forbidden one, that is." The camera zoomed out slightly, and a man appeared in the frame, standing in front of Sam. He was dressed in a white coat with a red striped apron on. He wore a butcher's hat and a cloth face mask. In his rubber-gloved hands, he held a large red-handled butcher's scimitar, and in the other, he held a sharpening rod. The man started running the knife up and down the blade in a smooth fashion, the steel on steel making a smooth shh, shh, shh noise. Sam's panicked, muffled yells growing stronger. The man placed down the sharpening rod and walked around the table. Sam turned his head and started what sounded like desperate pleading with the man. "Poor little lamb," the man cooed. "It won't hurt long, and you'll be delicious." Even from here, I could see that tears filled my friend's eyes. As he struggled, the man rolled Sam onto his front and pulled his head over the edge of the table. The man then walked out of shot and returned with a metal bucket. He placed it on the floor below Sam's head. In a swift motion, he grabbed a tuft of Sam's hair and lifted his head and started slitting his throat. Crimson burst from his neck and splashed over the bucket and onto the floor, my friend's body jerking uncontrollably as blood spewed out of his neck like a volcanic eruption. As I watched this happen, I threw up. I fell out of my chair in horror. I pulled myself away, not able to see anymore. I fell again by the door, the speakers of my computer loud enough to hear what sounded like slicing and grunting. I lay curled up in the corner, sobbing amidst a panic attack, the minutes feeling like hours. When the sound stopped, I shakily got up and walked to my computer. Avoiding the pool of sick on the floor, I forced myself to look at the screen. The page had closed. The Chrome displayed the Reddit screen. The Facebook tab had one notification. I didn't want to click it, but I willed myself to. It was a message from Sam. "I like it." My aunt moved into my great-grandmother's house. My paternal great-grandmother owned a house in the woods. She passed away when I was 22, 8 years ago. Her husband had passed away before I was born from alcohol poisoning. When my grandmother passed away, my aunt bought her house. One night, my aunt was in bed. Her husband was away for work. She woke up to a banging sound coming from the hallway, as if someone was trying to get through the door, joining the living room and hallway with something large and heavy, and kept hitting it off the door frame. My aunt got up to check what it was. She thought her husband may have came home early from his trip. He worked in construction, so often lugged heavy items through the house to put outside. There was nobody there. She decided it was her imagination and went back to bed. Minutes later, the same noise started again, and she swore she could hear someone singing about a tree. Eventually, it stopped, and she went to sleep. The following day, my aunt told my father this story. His face went white, and he asked if the song she heard was about a yellow ribbon around an oak tree. My great-grandfather, an alcoholic former World War II soldier, was in a wheelchair and would come home almost daily from the local pub singing that song. He would proceed to ram his wheelchair into the doorframe, trying to get it through the door in his drunken state. My father didn't have the heart to tell her. The girl I met was not alive. I bet some of you guys have never experienced any paranormal events before. I'm a taxi driver in a small city in Vietnam. Well, I've been sticking to this job for almost 20 years, and I am confident to say that I have experienced and seen many abnormal things that can't be explained by science, and the story I'm about to share is one of the creepiest and hair-raising experiences of my whole life. It was a late evening, and as I was about to go home and enjoy a big fresh glass of beer in the local pub, there was a knock on the window. A female voice spoke up. "Hello, can you take me to the Kangaroo supermarket?" I responded, "Yeah, sure." She hopped in the car, and I started to drive. During the drive, she just kept silent and stuck her eyes on the phone the whole time. Well, from what I saw, she looked gorgeous, and that girl was maybe in her late 20s. I tried to spark up a conversation with her, but it seemed that she didn't like talking much because she just answered yes or no to all of my questions. I realized that, so I focused on driving. We were eventually at the supermarket, and she gave me money and a little extra money for the good service. She said thank you, and then went straight to the supermarket. It was now 8 p.m., and it was too late for a beer at the local pub. Therefore, I drove to the nearby convenience store and bought a few cans of beer to drink when I arrived home. The next day, I woke up and enjoyed a hot cup of coffee while watching the news. As I was immersing myself in thoughts, suddenly, I heard on the TV that there was a corpse found by the police, and it was said that the person was dead at least a couple of days. Everything was still normal until I saw the bracelet. It was the same bracelet that the girl wore last night. Her name was then revealed on the news. It shocked me and scared me all at once, because that was the name she told me after she said thanks to me last night. At that point, I was sure that corpse belonged to the girl. Up until now, I've still had so many questions about that girl, but I guess they would all remain unanswered. BFF Cannibalism. I'm not looking to bury the lead here. I'm straight up telling you guys my next door neighbor was a cannibal. He was the chow down trucker all the news stations were talking about around this time last year. Well, to me, his name was Devin, and he was a pretty cool guy. I know it's probably going to get me in trouble for saying it, but I didn't care that he was eating people. It wasn't like he killed any of them. He just took the parts from the medical waste he collected for that hazmat company he worked at. Not like none of us never took Post-its. Anyway, Devin was awesome. Every weekend he'd invite us over for barbecue or some kind of feast. Now I can practically hear you all yelling at me that it was people we were eating. And yes, A lot of the time it was people. But like I said, there were spare parts that hospitals were just going to throw out anyways. Besides that, you can't judge me. You never had the smell of human flesh wafting over your fence. By the time Devin got caught, he had cooking that stuff down to a science. He knew to cook them low and slow. What I can't figure out is how he got that skin so crispy it just snapped when you bit down, but kept the meat so juicy it practically melted in your mouth. No matter how hard I try, I can't figure out what he did, and his lawyers keep telling me to stop writing to him in prison. I can still taste the marrow we used to scoop out of the bones together. The summer sausages made of the lining of the small intestine and liver pate. Backyard barbecues haven't been the same since he got sent up the river. So here's my pitch, guys. Are any of you interested in signing my charge.org petition to get Devin early parole? He won't hurt anyone, I promise. I already prepped a freezer full of meat in my basement for him, and 3 well-fed renters in my attic that I'm keeping loose and limber for when the stuff in the freezer runs out. It'd be a real shame for that meat to continue to go to waste on a subpar cook like myself, with a capital C chef like Devin rots behind bars. Free Devin. That is all. I would like to give a heartfelt thank you to the special friends of the channel. Your generosity means the world to me. If you would like to support the channel, the link is below in the description. Also, please send me your stories to duchessofdarkness27@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram at duchess.ofdarkness or Twitter at duchessofdarkn2. I want to thank you all for your support, your kindness, and your encouragement. I appreciate it so very much. Until next time.